Leave a like if you like the video, and subscribe of course. The definition of contrast is the state of being strikingly different from something else in juxtaposition or close association, or to differ strikingly. I just had to spell it out for you. Conflict can be shown in many ways. There's conflict in dialogue, there's conflict in color, and there's conflict in character. And there's probably something else too. One of my most shocking discoveries on my research on contrast is that every member of the Teen Titans has a different skin color. Another place where contrast is used is in these thumbnails. I try to make each thumbnail contrast with the last one so that it doesn't, so like for example, I had the thought of having the text be in red for this one because the reference I'm making is to Scarface in the thumbnail. But I make these two videos contrast so that they both stick out more. If they're both all together, if you clicked on my channel and every single thumbnail looked exactly the same, you probably wouldn't click on anything. If they were all different, you would be more likely to click on at least one of them, which they are, by the way. Contrast just means that two things are different, that's literally it. The type of contrast we've been talking about, the Teen Titans thing and the channel thumbnail thing, that was color contrast. Next, we're going to talk about conflict in story and character. Contrast is conflict before the conflict starts. Contrast is the chessboard and its pieces being set up, while conflict is the actual game that happens after the setup. Contrast is no action. Before anything happens in a story, there's always going to be contrast. Say two characters are doing nothing before anyone makes a move. And contrast is just how they are. You set up contrast in your story beforehand. When things get into motion, it will breed conflict. You want your main character and your main antagonist to have as much contrast as possible, if the story calls for that, but that's a different conversation. Their differences make the other one pop out more, because one is not like the other. If they both look the same, then it would sort of be like, eh. And the series that does this all the time, like it's almost textbook, is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Every single villain has like a perfect contrast of the main character. Down to the character designs, down to the colors, down to the everything, dude. So there's Jonathan Joestar, and then there's Dio Brando, and then there's Dio's poor, Jonathan's rich, Jonathan's dad loves him, Dio's dad, like, beats him, Jonathan has a sweetheart, Dio steals a kiss from the sweetheart, Dio has red eyes, Jonathan has blue eyes, Jonathan's a gentleman, Dio's a scoundrel. Jonathan uses fights with this golden sunshine magic, while Dio is a vampire, something that's literally allergic to the sunshine. Jonathan is human, and Dio forfeits his humanity to defeat Jonathan. So Dio hates Jonathan, but Jonathan does not necessarily hate Dio. While Dio always has some like trick up his sleeve. And you get it. It's like basically good versus evil. Jonathan's hair is blue and Dio's hair is blonde. So contrast doesn't always have to be exact opposites, but it just needs to be different from yellow. For example, if I have yellow and yellow, like a character who has yellow hair and another character that has yellow hair, then that's not contrast. But if a character has yellow hair and another one has purple hair, then that is contrast. It's contrast and it's opposites. Because on a color wheel, purple and yellow pop out against each other the most. So that would be opposites. So since Jonathan has blue hair and Dio doesn't have more of an orange hair to directly opposite, you know what, you get it, okay. They just need to be different. They don't need to be opposites. The best example is in part 4 with Kira and Josuke. One is a delinquent but is actually like a really nice person. Meanwhile, one's dressed up as a normal guy and is like the most evil man ever. One wears a heart and the peace sign on his jacket. Meanwhile, the other has skulls on his tie. One is very open to making lots of friends, and the other one shelters himself away from everyone. Josuke will willingly get into a fight with someone, meanwhile Kira only does it when he gets annoyed. Kira likes the quiet, Josuke is very loud. And one's power is to touch something and then destroy it, and the other's power is to fix everything that they touch. But one is slow, and one is fast. And I just love it. Everything down to how they look, what colors they wear, the things they say, their dialogue, even their relationship with the other characters is different. And in this same part of JoJo, the main cast, a good amount of which go to the same school and all have to wear the same uniforms, still find their own personal ways to decorate their uniform. As we've said, each character sort of has like their values. You know, Josuke values like peace but what you don't realize is that this little centerpiece where sort of like his chest is showing, it's sort of heart-shaped, and there's a heart motif in a lot of his design, as you can see from the other heart, which is on the collar. This paired with the peace sign shows us what he's all about. But notice how only the things that are yellow or golden, you can say, contrast with the regular. He's a pompadour gangster, and his color scheme is summed up in yellow and purple, which are two colors that directly contrast each other. They make the other one stand out. So all the features that make him a gangster, a contrast with who he truly is. Then we have Josuke's best friend, Okuyasu. And unlike Josuke, instead of having like this sort of like purplish, like deep purple, he is more profoundly a blue. Like, he's wearing blue for sure. There's no question about it. On his color, we just see a bunch of money symbols all over his body with the word billion on the side of his arm. So I'm pretty sure that Okuyasu is much more active in the whole gang activities type thing. He's not like a gang member though. He's just more of like a delinquent. But there is this one episode where we see his desire for money basically get the entire group into trouble. But to be fair, Josuke went after the money too, as any high schooler would. He also has the 2 green belts and the green shoes. So that makes his color palette green, yellow, and blue. And I do see that little purple, that's like the undershirt. That's like the tank top. There was one episode where I don't remember when that happened, but it happened. When they're both wearing their tank tops, Yasu has a purple one and Josuke has a yellow one, which means that their colors completely contrast when you look at the color wheel. Also, he has gray hair, so that might indicate that he's a super senior. And his stand, the hand, contrasts Josuke's stand, Crazy Diamond, because the hand just erases everything it touches. His outfit's green. That's basically it. I'm pretty sure it's only because he's a lower classman, because later on we do see him get a blue one, but his hair is much more loose and flowing than the other two. But at the same time, his hair changes like 3 times throughout the show, but they're all still much different than whatever Josuke and Okuyasu have going on. But the green shows that he's more capable and more sort of precautious or suspicious of most things that the others wouldn't be. And lastly, we have this guy. He's got 5 belts down the middle. Actually 6 belts if you count the one at the bottom. But he's just a very secretive guy in the show, and he's not really a main character. He shows up in like 2 episodes, it doesn't matter. Contrast can also be shown through dialogue. The contrast found in the dialogue of The Big Lebowski is really great. This first bowling alley scene is a perfect example of how conflict works through dialogue. While I read this excerpt from the script of The Big Lebowski, keep in mind that Walter tries to keep himself as the top dog of the situation, so the alpha male, but he just comes off as stupid. Meanwhile, Dude is the most straightforward one here, and is just trying to get to the root of the problem. If it were not for him, then the conversation's topic would steer far from the rug. Meanwhile, Donnie just wants to know what the situation even is.
This was a valued rug.
Yeah, man, it really tied the room together.
This was a valued,
What tied the room together, dude?
Were you listening to the story, dog?
What?
Were you listening to the dude's story?
I was bowling.
So you have no frame of reference. You're like a child who wanders in the middle of a movie theater and wants to know.
What is your point, Walter?
There's no reason. There's no reason. Here's my point, dude. There's no reason. Yeah, Walter, what's your point?
We all know who was at fault, so what are you talking about?
No, what are you talking? I'm not worried. Unchecked aggression here.
What is he talking about?
My rug.
Forget it, Donnie, you're out of your element.
This Chinaman who peed on my rug. I can't go give him build, so what are you talking about?
What are you talking about? The Chinaman is not. I'm talking about drawing a line in the sand, dude. Across this line, you do not, Chinaman is not the preferred, Asian American police.
Walter, this is not a guy who built the railroads here. This is a guy who peed on my...
So in this scene, there's clearly some vocal dominance going on between the 3. And if you were to like rank the 3 based on the control they have on the conversation, it would be Walter in first, Dude in second, and Donnie in last, obviously. The contrast is clearly formed. Also, this sets up their dynamic throughout the movie, where Walter thinks he knows what he's talking about, and he constantly moves the conversation to like something completely different. He mentions Vietnam a lot in this movie, usually to Vietnam, usually something about Vietnam. An episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, where Aang is trying to learn earthbending from Toph, but what he doesn't realize is that earthbending directly contradicts with his air monk upbringing. Earth and air are a completely opposing element. They're on the other side of the other, which means for the Avatar, if they start out learning air, it'll be very difficult for them to learn how to earthbend. After the basic training, he can't move a rock, Then the ensuing conversation happens. Aang asks if maybe there's another way, if he came at the boulder from another angle. But Toph says that's the exact problem, and says that he has to stop thinking like an airbender. There's no different angle, no clever solution, no trickety trick that is going to move that rock. You have to face it head on. And when I said head on, and when she means head on, she means like this. Jumps and destroys rock with her head. But then Toph walks away and then Katara stops her. But then Katara stops to talk to Toph. Katara then tells Toph privately that she's been teaching Aang for a while now, and he responds and says that he responds well to a positive teaching experience. Lots of encouragement and praise. Kind words. If he's doing something wrong, maybe a gentle nudge in the right direction. Toph doesn't take this advice. I've been playing Metal Gear recently, and there's very good opposition going on between Meryl and Snake. Meryl is the Colonel's niece. Meanwhile, Meryl has a family, but Snake mentions that he has no family. Snake is a legendary war hero that has literal legends about him, and Meryl is just a rookie. But what I really want to talk about between these two is that Snake has developed an attraction, a little crush on Meryl. So, despite him saying things that like contradict this, his actions say otherwise. He keeps on putting up this front that it was only for the mission. He puts everything on the line to go save her. And he admits it himself, that he's doing it. He's not doing it for the Colonel. He's not doing it, well, he probably is doing it partially for the Colonel. But he shouts that he's doing it for himself. In the conflict video, we identified this as self-conflict. But if you want as much contrast to be in your story then you should have your character conflict with themselves. Contrast with themselves. Usually this comes in the form of a character wanting something, but needing to do something else. For example, Snake wants to save Meryl, but he needs to complete his mission. That's his objective. Also, before this whole Meryl predicament began, there was something revealed about her through Psycho Mantis, who can read minds, and he said that Snake holds a very big place in Meryl's heart. But something that conflicts with this is that we also find out that she had psychotherapy to get rid of her attraction to men, for military purposes. Which proves to be a bummer for Snake. Things aren't as simple as the two want to be together, so why don't they just be together? But they both have things working against them that stop them from doing this. Also, they're literally military personnel. And there are a couple other things that would be weird about that, but yeah. It goes to show that there needs to be a fair share of internal conflict in the mix. Kind of like how in The Big Lebowski, all these things are happening to him, and yet he still shows up for bowling league. He just wants to go bowling. The guy just wants to go bowling. So yeah. That's what I mean by contrast and situation, to the point where our characters are contrasting so much that even their predicaments contrast with each other.
Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Please subscribe. I only have 16 subscribers. Please.
So if you made it this far into the video, so you know what it means. If you made it this far into the video, you have to comment, hey soul sister. Carrot cake, you can say carrot cake too. Or carrot cake, you can say carrot cake too.